Origin chance, home UX, and this is who took the first selfie, really? By channel Vsauce. Yes, this is a new Vsauce video. Yeah, it's a relic always. Once a year or twice a year he uploads, but the quality is ridiculous. Vsauce is one of the only channels that I've seen so far who's like nearly 10 years old, more than 10 years old, right? Yeah, I think his old videos like 2012 or something. This is a 10-year-old channel, but every year he just gets better, right? And especially nowadays, previous two videos I've seen were just top quality. So yeah, let's watch this one. Remember, if you like my reaction, do follow and subscribe so I know which type of videos to react to more. I love science or any scientific related videos, Kazgazat, Vsauce. So yeah, let's do it.
Hey, Vsauce! Michael here. On July 1st of 2015, a long-standing ban was lifted. Visitors were finally allowed to take selfies at the White House. This is the first legal selfie ever taken on a White House tour. But a year before the ban was lifted, in February of 2014, I met with the president and secretly took an illegal selfie while on the toilet in the West Wing. Thanks, Obama. Why am I admitting to this crime now? Well, it's time for the truth. Who took the first selfie? Really? Very few people would call this a selfie, but it is the oldest known self-portrait, a depiction someone made of themselves that includes head and shoulders. It was sculpted more than 3,000 years ago by Pharaoh Akhenaten's first chief royal sculptor, a guy named Bek. Next to himself, Bek sculpted his wife, Taharet, making this also a contender for oldest known Ussie. But the roots of the selfie go back further than this. We have been making things that resemble ourselves in whole or in part, intentionally or not, for as long as there's been cause and effect. Just looking into a pool of water creates a kind of selfie, a primitive, ephemeral one that you can't preserve or send to anyone, but it is undeniably an image of the self made by the self. Even the earliest life...
Alright, before we debate what a word selfie really means, let's go to the fundamentals. Selfies started because of the social media, first of all, and around the same time, mobiles start to get better and better cameras. Selfie in that sense means a person taking their own photo, right? So if somebody takes your photo, that's not a selfie, that's somebody took your photo, that's portrait. That's been happening for a long time now. So that statue thing really doesn't work, it's a portrait, like he said, right? So it's not much of selfie. Selfie doesn't mean it's your camera and your photos there, so it's selfie. No, you're supposed to take your own, like nobody else is involved, right? Just by you, one-man job. That's a selfie. So if somebody in the past took those kind of giant cameras, somehow timed it right and took their own photo, that would be a selfie. That's the whole definition of it. You could just define it, first of all, the word selfie doesn't say much, right? But it's just implied that selfie means that.
Forms on Earth were capable to some degree of self-discrimination. They could differentiate themselves from the environment around them. They have inside them, in some chemical form, a crude, pre-conscious sense of themselves. I call things like that a first-wave selfie. First-wave selfies are unintentional, automatic, or accidental resemblances something makes of itself in whole or in part, like prehistoric human footprints or the mental images animals have of their own bodies. The first big leap in selfie history, the second wave, began with the first intentional depictions of oneself. Second wave selfies include everything from Chauvet Cave's 32,000-year-old hand stencil prints to the paintings of Jan van Eyck and Judith Leister. But in the 19th century, self-depiction changed in another major way. A technology emerged that allowed likenesses of the self to be made faster and with less skill that seemed more accurate, less mediated, and more indexical than ever before. Photography ushered in the third wave selfie. In the fall of 1839, outside his family's lamp and chandelier store in Philadelphia, 30-year-old Robert Cornelius stood completely still for about 15 minutes in front of a camera he built using a modified opera glass and a sheet of silver-plated copper. The result was a significant image. It can be found on his gravestone in Philadelphia's Laurel Hill Cemetery. The Smithsonian calls it the first selfie. But they also...
Man, again, did he take it by himself? How can he do that with those cameras? If anybody else was taking it, that's not a selfie, that's a portrait. People have been doing that for a long time. That doesn't make it a selfie, right? You need to, really, define what selfie is. Selfie doesn't mean your own camera and taking your own photo any means. No, you're supposed to take it. That's a selfie. Otherwise, it's not a selfie.
Don't. In that same fall of 1839, a man named Henry Fitz Jr. took a photograph of himself in Baltimore. Smithsonian Magazine and pretty much everyone else has called Cornelius's selfie the first. But in their archives, the Smithsonian calls Fitz Jr.'s the first. The reason for this confusion is that, honestly, we don't know which of these came first. All we can be sure of is that neither of them is the first. Hippolyte Bayard, a Frenchman, wrote of taking a photo of himself in 1837, 2 years before these. But it's been lost. And other, even earlier examples may have been lost as well. Because these are photographs people took of themselves, it's largely uncontroversial to call them selfies. But they're not like...
But did they took themselves? Or somebody else was taking it? Does that count as selfie? Come on.
Selfies. If you've seen my video, Is Cereal Soup, you know what I just did there. Contrastive focus reduplication. That's
emphasis.
when you repeat a word in order to focus on prototypical examples in contrast to edge cases. For example, we went on a date last night, but it wasn't a date. In that statement, I'm contrasting what I did last night, which might have been a date, to a true date, which is obviously a date. Okay, anyway, the point is...
Yeah, basically, when somebody repeats a word, it usually goes by, it's an emphasis, right? Hawaiians do that, to put something emphasis on something, you're supposed to repeat it twice. That's what that means, right? Basically, when you say something, it implies that you mean something around the true definition, like we went on a date, but maybe it wasn't a date, but something like a date. It's implied that. But if you say date, you're putting emphasis on what is the definition of date in its truest form. That's what that was. So, it's not a selfie, but it's not a selfie. It just means that what I was just bitching about just a few minutes ago, that did he take it himself? So maybe that's what he's talking about. But yeah, you repeat the word to put emphasis on the word, like what really means.
No one called these selfies when they were taken. They were photographic self-portraits.
Yeah.
The word selfie wouldn't even exist for another 160 years after they were taken. So at some point between this and this, our relationship to self-depiction changed, and our vocabulary had to expand to discuss it. What rough beast emerged to make the coining of selfie necessary? Well, let's keep going. Around 1846, Czech photographer M.V. Lobathal took the earliest known selfie with a mirror. This, of course, would become a classic selfie technique. Mirrors provided an easy, early way to capture the self with a camera. But in my opinion, this mirror selfie from around 1900 is the most arresting. I think you die at least 3 times. Once, when your body stops living. Again, usually sometime later when your name is spoken for the last time. But now, thanks to photography, more and more of us are able to save ourselves from the third, the last time an image of you is seen. The identity of this woman is unknown. That makes it the oldest known selfie taken by a person whose name we have forgotten.
Damn.
This is the oldest known example of the classic outstretched arm selfie technique. It was taken by Joseph Byron in 1909.
Okay.
Images like these were a significant step toward the eventual fourth wave.
I like how this is the thumbnail, because this is the selfie that we think of, right? I'm going inside the camera like that. This is epic.
Selfie. The presence of a camera or arms or poles in the shot, evidence of how it was made, are hallmarks of the modern-day selfie stereotype.
Yeah.
For example, a 2013 ad campaign for the Cape Times reimagined famous historical photographs as selfies, and in every single one, an arm connecting the subject to the camera was used. 5 years after Byron's armed selfie, Anastasia Nikolaevna Romanova, the youngest daughter of Tsar Nicholas II and great-granddaughter to Britain's Queen Victoria and Prince Albert, took this photo of herself. She was 13 years old at the time, so many have claimed it to be the first selfie ever taken by a teenager. But that's not true. In 1852, 61 years earlier, British chemist William Henry Perkin took this photo of himself when he was just 14. However, even though Anastasia wasn't the first teenager to take a selfie, in another way,
That's 14? I mean, damn.
Anastasia wasn't the first
That
teenager
is
to
it.
take a selfie photo of
Look at the jawlines and everything. That's 14? God damn.
himself when he was just 14. However, even though Anastasia wasn't the first teenager to take a selfie, in another way, she was. Unlike Perkins, whose shot feels like a self-portrait, she took pictures that feel much more like we today would call selfies. The photos she took were personal. She sent them to friends to share her mood and daily life. Here she is posing with fake novelty teeth in 1915 or 16. 4 years after taking this famous selfie, her camera was confiscated, and not long after, Bolshevik revolutionaries executed her and her entire family together in a basement. Conclusive evidence of her death in 1918 wasn't uncovered until 2007. Although her work was cut short, she pioneered the use of photography as a social behavior, as a way to communicate, not just commemorate.
Makes sense.
She has been called the Kardashian of her day. But despite her influence, she was more of a trendsetter
Man, she was already young and killed brutally by Bolsheviks. Why would you do that? Why would you call her Kardashians? What's...
for hairstyles than photography. She didn't usher in a worldwide shift in behavior where young people everywhere started taking selfies. Camera manufacturers didn't rush to make self-portraiture easier, and articles weren't written about how great or how scary it was that young people were taking pictures of themselves. Though the modern-day selfie still wasn't born, it continued to gestate and kick within the womb.
Social
One
media.
such kick was the use of sticks and poles to activate a camera's shutter. In
That's a selfie
1925,
stick.
newlyweds Arnold and
Let's be honest, that looks like a selfie stick, like that, damn. Yeah, okay, the real selfie thing started because of social media, because we have somewhere to put it now, right? Even before people took their selfie, just, sit in their archives or somewhere in computer or whatever. But because of social media, you can just put it out there, right? So social media is the reason why selfie became a thing in the first place.
Helen Hogg used a long pole to take this picture. In 1934, Helmer Larsen used a fallen tree branch to snap this selfie with his wife Nami in Sweden. On Reddit, Chooch37 shared his grandfather using a selfie stick in the late 1940s. Here's one from 1957. And going back to 1920, here's Joseph Byron taking a handheld photograph with others. I mention this image because a second camera captured how it was taken, giving us an early depiction of what is now the recognizable human selfie pose.
Look at the camera.
Now, what I think makes this image so significant is that it's another early taste of the selfie as we know it today. As Jens Ruschitz pointed out in exploring the selfie, if you Google self-portrait, you get a lot of self-portraits. There's only one image that shows someone making a self-portrait, Norman Rockwell's famous triple self-portrait. But if you Google selfie, a lot of what you get aren't selfies. They're pictures of people taking selfies.
Okay.
For the selfie as we know it today, the pose of taking one is just as, if not more salient, than the actual result. Blogs and articles containing outrage over people taking selfies in inappropriate places or when they should be behaving differently rarely complain about the actual images. They dislike the performance. In 2015, Joanne Baterna Patena published a book of pictures of people taking selfies from which she had removed the environment, giving us what feel like selfie poses preserved in specimen jars. The idea that those taking photos can be a nuisance didn't begin with selfies. Far from it. There's a long tradition of photographers, especially tourists, raising eyebrows.
All right, first of all, about the outrage. If it's because they were smiling, I understand that, right? But if they're not smiling, they're just taking a photo of themselves. By this point, taking a selfie is like a social thing. It's not something like in the past time where cameras were like a, you take something like a DSLR or mirrorless proper camera and just go somewhere and make a whole scene to take a photo and everything. Yeah, that could feel like disruptive. You brought a camera, put it on a tripod or something, and actually took a photo. That's a lot of effort. And effort implies you're making light of the situation. But everybody has their phone with them. Everybody can just take their photo. So, and selfie becomes so common nowadays that it shouldn't be it shouldn't be something that you outrage about. Where you take it doesn't matter. It's just you're just capturing the moment that you visited some place. Doesn't mean you are intending something bad. But if you're smiling or doing this or something, then I understand. Like, look where you're standing, man. Come on.
For being annoying, centering themselves over the location, and being predictably herd-like. For example, the Pisa pushers found in Italy. The modern-day selfie that was to come, however, makes a person look like a tourist everywhere they go. Not because everything suddenly became a landmark, but because people have always loved looking at themselves. And as cameras became smaller and easier to handle, it was inevitable that people would start snapping more self-portraits. Vivian Dorothy Meyer took really cool mirror selfies in the 1950s and 60s, but she kept them to herself. Her selfies were unknown and unpublished during her lifetime. A couple of years before her death, she failed to make payments on a storage unit she rented, and her works were auctioned off. 6 months after her death in 2009, a collector who had acquired them uploaded her images to Flickr, and they went viral, inspiring exhibitions, a documentary. A road in Paris was even named after her. The popularization of instant cameras in the 60s and 70s made taking selfies physically and mentally easier. You didn't need to know how to develop the film yourself or feel self-conscious turning in selfies to be developed. But instant cameras with mirrors on the front didn't come around until decades later. Selfies still hadn't reached a tipping point. In 1969, Michael Collins took the first reverse selfie, a photograph that contains everyone but yourself. Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin are in this lander right here, and every human, living or dead at that time, is on this ball of rock. Only Collins himself, behind the lens, is absent. In 1983, Hiroshi Ueda submitted
At first I didn't realize what he was saying, but yeah, that is something heavy when you really think about it. When that photo was taken, from that point to backwards, there is no one. He's literally, everyone is in front of camera. I mean, imagine that. How the fuck do you even do that? That is the next level shit. Only way you can do that is from space, man. Right? Or, Earthrise or whatever. I'm pretty sure that was the one, right? Earthrise. But that was such a good photo, man. And even at that point, it's like, I'm literally the last human in that way, right? Everybody's in front of me.
A patent for a telescopic extender for supporting a compact camera, an early selfie stick. And 2 years prior, Lester Wisbrod started what was to become a personal tradition, using his new autofocusing compact camera to snap selfies with famous people. Wisbrod was the pioneer of the celebrity selfie. Still though, no one was using the word selfie. Selfies hadn't become a thing yet. But then...
Yeah, using one word, shortening a word and using some word like selfie wasn't a thing back then too. We really need to put things into perspective. In the last decade, that has become a thing. me with the memes and shit. With the rise of internet, rise of social media, this has become a thing, right? Shortening and tagging one thing, like it's a selfie. Memes become a big thing, right? So even if that become a thing, they wouldn't have called it selfie back then.
Something happened in Japan.
Okay.
In 1995, 19-year-old Toshikawa Hiromi, known as HiroMix, was nominated for the New Cosmos of Photography Award by world-renowned photographer Nobuyoshi Araki. She submitted a portfolio of snapshots she'd taken of her daily life, and she won the grand prize. There was already a unique culture of photo diary and photo booth use among young people in Japan, but HiroMix's sudden fame amongst teenagers and the educated elite made the practice a thing. Suddenly, young people all over Japan wanted to be like her. The New York Times called it HiroMix syndrome. Increased demand for cameras that made self-portraiture and proto-Instagramming easier led camera manufacturers to speed up the release of features that served immediate, frequent photography. HiroMix took a lot of photos, tens of thousands, and her work generated polarized reactions.
This is from 1995. God damn, it feels like today, right? This feels like a social media thing. That was in 1995.
Some critics adored her, while others found it all baffling. Now, by the time selfies were called selfies, the same debate was started again, but it was about the behavior HiroMix had brought into focus more than a decade before. It's hard to say who took the first selfie, but in my opinion, HiroMix took the first selfie.
Yeah.
Her work hastened and christened the arrival of the fourth wave selfie, the selfie as we know it today. Now, if it hadn't been her, it would have been someone else. People love looking at themselves, and it was becoming easier and easier to do so. But HiroMix popularized taking pictures of yourself as a social sharing activity, more akin to speaking than remembering, less a memory than a message. Nowhere is this more clear than in the story of the first camera phone picture.
All right, seriously. I mean, the Nicholas's daughter, right? Tsar Nicholas's daughter. I mean, you could argue that's a selfie thing too, because she was, taking the selfies same way everybody does today, right? Going through her life, taking different photos of herself. She was doing that. In a way, that is selfie, right? Then the other woman whose photos were auctioned, but she was constantly taking her photo from the mirror. That is also a selfie in a way. But I get it what he means by 1995. This is the one that sparked thing. She took those photography and of herself in daily lives in different ways. Like I said, that feels like today, the way she's taking poses and taking photos. And this was 1995, so this is kind of come close to what we think of selfie today, right? I mean, lines always going to be blurred, right? Whenever you try to uncover what is the first thing, you have to come to a point and agree that this is the true definition of selfie. And 1995 one, this Japan one feels the closest one.
On June 11, 1997, while his wife was in labor, Philippe Kahn jury-rigged together a makeshift system involving his StarTAC flip phone, a Casio QV, and a Toshiba laptop. When his daughter was born, he took a photo with the camera and used the laptop and phone connection to immediately email the image to more than 2,000 people. Social media is strongly associated with the fourth wave selfie, but as we've seen, it wasn't its origin. Instead, social media was simply a mouth that showed up later and demanded to be fed them.
Yep.
Online, we have no bodies. We can't just walk in and be seen. We have to upload images of our bodies for them to be there. Selfies are an easy solution because they don't require other people's help. But on top of that, there's a sense in which a photo of yourself taken by someone else is that person's point of view. It's their story. But a selfie? Well, a selfie's point of view doesn't belong to another person. When I look at a selfie of you, I'm not a third observer looking at you through someone else's eyes. It's just me looking at you. Selfies allow us to be online firsthand, not secondhand. In the same way that brown bears who migrated to the cold lands of the north evolved pale guard hairs and became polar bears, as humans migrated into the cold lands of the screen, they evolved selfies. By 2006, everyone knew that something was happening. The New York Times published an article that year about how young people were suddenly taking a lot of photos of themselves. Was it weird? What did it mean? Not once in the
All right, his point of that, taking selfie, how is that different from somebody else taking a photo? That just makes me, think about like lots of things we do and lots of things we see and process. We don't realize like how many subtexts are there, where our emotion comes from, how do we really feel about it, right? If things just, work in our brain, right? We don't really, put it on a paper and really try to cut it down and dissect it. Like, why did we feel like this? Why are we thinking like this? What is so our brain works that way, right? So our brain automatically triggers like that person is taking their own photo and somehow that's different. Our brain suddenly realizes as soon as we see selfie. Like he said, if somebody else take a photo and it's a portrait like that, fine. But if you see somebody's arm going behind the camera and taking the photo, our brain suddenly fires that. Oh, they took their own photo. They are the only one there, right? They captured their own moment while they are the only one there, that kind of thing. They don't have to be alone. But for that moment, they are the only one there. They are the one who took the photo and they are the only one there, that kind of thing. So selfie can be multiple people, but it doesn't mean that there is a hidden person behind the camera. That's the whole thing.
Article is the word selfie used. But it could have been, because sometime between 1995 and 2006, the word selfie was born. Selfie with a Y had been a word since the 1600s. It meant self-centered or selfish. But selfie with an IE is new. The earliest recorded usage of it is from a September 13th, 2002 post on Dr. Carl's Self-Serve Science Forum. Australian Nathan Hope uploaded an image he took of how busted up his lip had gotten, and he wrote, "Sorry about the focus, it was a selfie." Hope has been hailed as the inventor of the word selfie, but says himself that he probably heard it somewhere else first, which is likely. The word selfie is a hypocorism, a pet name, an affectionate, familiar, cuter version of an existing word. Australians are famous for doing this. Barbecue, Barbie. Mosquito, Mozzie. Australian, Aussie. Self-portrait, selfie. They don't only use IE, they love O, S, and Z too. Australian English has given us probs, rando, totes, saws, preggers, and yes, even doggo. MySpace was an early incubator of thriving selfie colonies. But in 2004, when Facebook launched as a serious social media platform for people at elite universities, there was a brief feeling that selfies were falling out of favor. However, when the iPhone 4 debuted with a front-facing camera in 2010, the selfie was declared officially back. In 2013, usage of...
So it's all iPhone's fault, is that it? I mean, yeah, it makes sense. Imagine that. Suddenly iPhone comes, here's a fucking... obviously, I'm pretty sure iPhone wasn't the first camera, right? That's how usually it goes. Probably you can find some Motorola or something in the past. They also had one-off phone that had a front camera or something. But yeah, iPhone was kind of the first one. In that way, it was mass-produced. So iPhone came with, this is the first smartphone. It also has a front camera. People like, selfie is getting old, but look at that, it's just front camera. I can see my face in the screen while I take a photo. How could you not do it, right? I bet this is one of the first reasons why DSLR mirrorless camera has the flipping screen, so you can see yourself when you're doing the things as well, right? taking your own video or whatever, vlog or whatever shit.
The word selfie had jumped 17,000% in the last year, and Oxford dictionaries declared it the word of the year. Everyone knew what a selfie was. We started calling things that existed before the word selfies as well. But that is an anachronym, a word used out of place, in time. Anacronyms can be words that have lingered around too long, like when we say we're dialing a number on a smartphone, even though actual turning dials are no longer involved. Or when we call this...
God, yeah, this... That's what dialing means, right? I didn't even thought of that ever. Yeah, you're supposed to dial, but that's not. Why do we say that though? Why do we still say that? Let's dial the number.
Foil, although it's actually the cheaper and more durable aluminum foil that
Yeah.
superseded it. Anacronyms can also be words from today, like selfie, that barge back into the past, like calling these medieval church singers the first boy band. Nailing down the definition of a selfie in the modern sense is tricky, of course. Does a selfie need to be a photograph? If not, why? If so, do I need to be holding the camera? Does the use of a timer or a drone I'm not even touching mean that it's not a selfie, or just a different kind of selfie? Are humans a selfie since God made us in his image? Because of questions like that, I prefer
No.
what I've been doing in this video. Just allow a selfie to mean anything that something has made that resembles itself or part of itself. That covers a lot of stuff, but can be broken down into 4 waves. First wave selfies are unintentional. The second wave began with the first deliberate depictions of oneself. The third,
There's a reason why they're called portraits. You portray yourself, right? If you take a portrait like that. So these are portraits in a way, right? Not really selfie. You can't really blur the line of the. I mean, like I said, selfie word doesn't say much, so you can easily confuse with anything. Like the person, like he said, like one of the person even said that, are we all selfies since God made us in God's image or whatever, like the Bible says? But no, that's not really. If somebody makes a mural of someone, is that a selfie? I mean, do you have to take a camera? No, you can set a timer. The point is, if you do it yourself without anybody's help with a camera, that's a selfie. You don't have to hold it. If you put it on a timer, why not? If you take your own photo through a mirror, that's still a selfie. The key word is you take your own photo. That's it.
with photography's promise of recognizable self-depictions that were significantly more accessible. The fourth wave is when selfies became a thing, a cultural phenomenon motivated by a desire not just to have images, but to be images. Throughout the 20th century especially, we found ourselves increasingly surrounded by images, news, and travels and products and stories. The entire world outside our head could be seen like never before. Not in person, but through images. In the midst of this image world was the human animal, an organism that got to look at images, but wasn't one. Which was too bad, because to be an image was to be something. Well, selfies gave us that power. They put it in our own hands. Photography allows more of us than ever before to delay the third death. But the fourth wave selfie flattens the boundaries of time and space now. We can be anywhere, whenever. Does my face need to be depicted for it to be a selfie? Well, in October of 2013, Kim Kardashian posted this image on Instagram. Within a month, Belfie had been added to the Urban Dictionary. A Belfie is a selfie of your butt. Butt selfie, Belfie. Belfie guides and histories and even a Belfie stick soon followed. And this all raises a
Still
serious
selfie,
question
man.
about society. If a selfie of your butt is called a Belfie, shouldn't a selfie of your face be called a Felfie?
No,
And as always,
don't do that.
thanks for watching.
What the hell, Michael? Don't put thoughts in people's head. What the? There you go. Is there more?
Let me show you something I've been working on. It is a star projector. It puts stars all over your bedroom. And who doesn't love that? Me. Because it's always just the same stars I could see if I went outside. That's why mine is different. It shows the night sky not from Earth, but as seen on TRAPPIST-1e, an exoplanet that was one of the first targets of
Okay.
the new Webb telescope, because it's very likely to be friendly to life. Whether or not anything lives there, we don't know yet. But what we do know is that it is the furthest known habitable exoplanet from which the
But it doesn't spin, so it's just a very small ring where there could be life, right? I'm pretty sure I remember that.
Naked human eye could still see our sun. You can turn on this projector and see us just as others might. Alien others. Problem is, the Curiosity Box is a limited edition thing, and the box this comes in already sold out. That's why it's important to join now. We are now taking pre-orders for our winter box, and for the holidays, it's 50% off. I won't spill too many beans, but the winter box contains something that will help you if you have no choice. Don't miss our best deal of the year. Get your first box for just $30. That's 50% off by using code Black Friday. And don't forget that Mel Science is now part of our family. It's the perfect way to get your kids thinking and curious. Let me put my brain food into your gray matter mouth. Join today.
Not the best. Wait a minute. Yep, there we go. Yeah. The way he said it, okay, that's gonna make certain people nervous. But I can see how it was sold so fast. One thing I've noticed that anything that Vsauce makes like that is pretty interesting, right? The whole you can see stars from the trap is one thing that is fucking awesome. But yeah, look, here's what I'm gonna say, right? If you put your footprint somewhere and take the photo, that's not a selfie, right? It's a portrait, right? It's portraying yourself, right? Through some means, like by putting your print somewhere, right? Somebody else can take your photo and that's a portrait as well, but it's a portrait. Selfie means you take your whole or whatever image, right? Like top half or whole body, whatever, depends on the camera. You're supposed to take your own image by yourself. Whether you take it by putting on a timer on a tripod with some camera, or so through your mobile camera, whatever, you're supposed to take your own photo. If anybody else takes it, that's not a selfie, right? If you put fingerprints somewhere and take the photo, that's not a selfie. You could argue anything, like, okay, everything is a selfie, like the person said, even we are selfies since God made us in image based on the Bible theory, or whatever. So you can argue any of that, but the point is, selfie just means you're taking your own photo, right? In the social media age, that became a thing because, like you said, the iPhone came with the front camera, right? And in social media, it became a really easy thing to post your own photos through mirrors or directly. So yeah, the basic thing here is you take your own photo, that's a selfie, right? Not your fingerprints, not your foot in the dirt, yourself with, camera. So yeah. But yeah, this was a really good video, man. I loved it. Vsauce. Alright, well, if you like my next, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.